The world of international relations is a complex web of negotiations and agreements. Countries try to cooperate on issues like trade, security, and the environment, but beneath the surface of these global discussions lies another layer of politics. This is the realm of domestic pressures and internal debates. To understand how nations interact, we need a framework that connects these two levels of engagement. This is where Robert D. Putnam's theory of two-level games comes in. Putnam, a renowned political scientist, argues that international negotiations are not simply about states pursuing their interests on a global stage. They are also shaped by the dynamics of domestic politics within each country. In essence, world leaders are playing two games simultaneously. On one level, they are trying to strike deals with their counterparts from other nations. On another level, they are constantly looking over their shoulders at their own constituencies back home. These constituencies include voters, interest groups, and political opponents. Understanding this interplay between domestic and international politics is crucial for deciphering the complexities of global affairs. It sheds light on why some agreements succeed while others fail. It also provides insights into the strategies leaders can use to navigate this challenging terrain. Imagine a grand summit where world leaders gather to discuss a pressing global challenge. This is the first level of Putnam's two-level game, the international level, often referred to as Level 1. At Level 1, national leaders take center stage. They represent their country's interests in negotiations with other states. Their goal is to strike deals that benefit their nation. Think of it as a grand chessboard where each move represents a diplomatic maneuver. Countries bargain, form alliances, and sometimes even engage in brinkmanship to secure their objectives. The outcome of these interactions shapes the global landscape, influencing everything from trade relations to security arrangements. At Level 1, leaders often speak the language of national interest and global cooperation. They emphasize the importance of finding common ground and working together to address shared challenges. However, their actions are always constrained by the realities of domestic politics back home. The agreements they reach must ultimately be acceptable to the domestic constituencies that hold the keys to their political survival. While diplomats negotiate on the international stage, a different kind of battle is waged back home. This is the second level of Putnam's framework, the domestic level, or Level 2. At Level 2, the focus shifts from the global to the local. Domestic politics take center stage as various interest groups, political parties, and public opinion exert pressure on their leaders. Leaders have to consider these domestic pressures while making decisions on the international stage. Their ability to make international commitments depends on whether they can gain domestic support for those commitments. Imagine a cacophony of voices representing diverse interests: labor unions concerned about trade agreements, environmental groups advocating for climate action, and businesses seeking access to foreign markets. The domestic arena is where leaders translate international agreements into concrete policies. It is also where they face the consequences of their decisions, both positive and negative. The success of international negotiations hinges on finding solutions that satisfy both levels of the game. This is where the concept of win sets becomes crucial. A win set represents the range of possible agreements that would be acceptable at both the international and domestic levels. Think of it as two overlapping circles. One circle represents the acceptable outcomes for the international negotiators. The other circle represents the acceptable outcomes for domestic constituencies. The overlapping area, where both sets of preferences intersect, is the win set. The larger the win set, the greater the likelihood of reaching an agreement. Conversely, a small or non-existent win set suggests that a deal is unlikely. The challenge for leaders is to navigate these overlapping demands and find solutions that bridge the gap between international and domestic pressures. Section 5. When domestic politics derail diplomacy: involuntary defection. Sometimes even the most carefully crafted international agreements can unravel due to domestic opposition. This is known as involuntary defection in Putnam's framework. It occurs when a leader is unable to ratify or implement an international agreement because of resistance from domestic political forces. Imagine a leader who negotiates a trade deal that promises economic benefits but also faces opposition from powerful labor unions concerned about potential job losses. If the leader is unable to overcome this domestic opposition, they may be forced to renege on the agreement, even if it is in the national interest. Involuntary defection highlights the limits of executive power in democratic societies. Leaders are not free agents, they are constrained by the need to maintain domestic support. Understanding the potential for involuntary defection is crucial for managing expectations in international negotiations. It underscores the importance of building domestic consensus before making international commitments. Section 6. Synergistic linkage, turning domestic pressure into global power. While domestic politics can sometimes hinder international cooperation, it can also be a source of strength. Putnam uses the term synergistic linkage to describe situations where domestic pressures in different countries align to create a greater impetus for international action. Imagine two countries facing similar domestic challenges, such as climate change or economic inequality. If public opinion in both countries demands action on these issues, it can create a powerful incentive for leaders to cooperate on the international stage. Synergistic linkage can transform domestic concerns into a driving force for global solutions. It highlights the interconnectedness of domestic and international politics. It also underscores the potential for transnational advocacy networks and social movements to influence the global agenda. Section 7. The 1978 Bonn Summit, a case study in two-level games. The 1978 Bonn Summit, a gathering of world leaders from major industrialized nations, provides a compelling illustration of Putnam's two-level game in action. The summit aimed to address a global economic crisis marked by stagflation, a combination of stagnant economic growth and high inflation. At the international level, known as Level 1, the United States, under President Jimmy Carter, pushed for a coordinated approach to stimulate global demand. Germany, led by Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, was initially reluctant to embrace expansionary policies due to concerns about inflation. However, both leaders also faced significant domestic pressures, which we refer to as Level 2. Carter was under fire for his handling of the economy, while Schmidt faced growing public discontent. These domestic pressures expanded the win set for both leaders, making them more willing to compromise to secure a deal. The resulting Bonn Agreement reflected a delicate balance between the competing international and domestic pressures at play. It committed countries to a combination of fiscal stimulus and monetary policy coordination. The summit showcased how the interplay of domestic and international politics can shape the outcome of high-stakes global negotiations. Section 8. Shaping the win set. Factors that influence agreement. The size and shape of the win set are not static. They are influenced by various factors that can either facilitate or hinder international agreements. Understanding these factors is crucial for negotiators seeking to navigate the complexities of two-level games. One crucial factor is the distribution of domestic preferences. If domestic constituencies are deeply divided on an issue, it can shrink the win set, making it more difficult to find an internationally acceptable solution that also satisfies domestic stakeholders. Political institutions also play a role. Countries with strong centralized governments may have larger win sets because leaders face fewer constraints from domestic opposition. Conversely, in countries with weak or fragmented political systems, leaders may have limited leeway to make international commitments. Negotiator strategies can also influence the win set. Section 9. Navigating the two-level game strategies for success. Given the complexities of two-level games, how can leaders enhance their chances of success in international negotiations? What strategies can they employ to bridge the gap between domestic and international demands? One key strategy is to cultivate domestic support early in the negotiation process. By engaging with stakeholders, building coalitions, and addressing concerns up front, leaders can expand their win set and increase the likelihood of securing domestic ratification for any agreements reached. Another important tactic is to frame international agreements in ways that resonate with domestic audiences. This might involve highlighting the economic benefits of a trade deal, emphasizing the security implications of a defense pact, or appealing to shared values like human rights or environmental protection. Skilled negotiators also understand the importance of leverage. By signaling their willingness to walk away from a bad deal, leaders can sometimes strengthen their bargaining position and secure more favorable terms. Section 10. The importance of alignment, domestic politics and global leadership. In an increasingly interconnected world, the ability to align domestic and international interests is paramount for effective global leadership. Countries that can bridge the gap between these two levels of politics are better positioned to shape the international agenda and advance their national interests on the global stage. When domestic politics are aligned with international commitments, it creates a virtuous cycle. Leaders can confidently negotiate from a position of strength, knowing that they have the backing of their citizens. This in turn enhances their credibility and effectiveness in international forums. Conversely, when there is a disconnect between domestic and international priorities, it can undermine a country's standing in the world. Involuntary defection, for instance, can damage a nation's reputation and make it harder to forge lasting agreements. Section 11. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of two-level games. More than 3 decades after its publication, Robert Putnam's two-level game theory remains a powerful lens through which to view the complexities of international relations. It reminds us that global politics is not simply a game played by states, but a multi-layered process shaped by the interplay of domestic and international forces. By understanding the dynamics of two-level games, we can better appreciate the challenges and opportunities facing world leaders. We can also gain insights into the strategies they can employ to navigate this complex terrain and achieve their objectives in a world defined by both cooperation and competition. The enduring legacy of Putnam's framework lies in its ability to illuminate the crucial link between domestic politics and global affairs, a connection that remains as relevant today as ever.